Thank you. All right, welcome to the September 4th, 2025 Land Use and Natural Resources Committee meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If Director Bradford would please be kind enough to lead us in the
Please
pledge.
stand, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, could the clerk please take a roll?
And just a housekeeping announcement, Chair Baines and the members of the committee. This meeting was set up to allow online participation for a committee member who was expected to join remotely. Since that member is not online today, we will need to not do a roll call vote for the action items as all members are present in the room. We will, however, take public comments both via Zoom and in person. For members of the public viewing online, we welcome and encourage your participation. Instructions for providing public comment are listed at the top of today's agenda. And on to roll. Directors, just please confirm your presence when I call your name. Directors Bradford.
Here.
Houlihan.
Here.
Clark Kretz.
Here.
Maple.
Here.
Teeter. Here. Villegas. Absent. Vice Chair Hume.
Here.
Vice Chair Kozlowski. Absent. And Chair Baines.
Present. Okay. Moving on to public communication. This is the time for anyone who wishes to address the board on an item that does not appear elsewhere on the agenda. Is there a member of the public that wishes to comment?
There's no public comment.
And now, last bit of housekeeping before the main agenda, disclosures. This is time for any director to disclose any conflicts of interest on items on the agenda. Are there any conflicts from any members? All right, seeing none there, we'll now take up the consent calendar. Clerk, is there anyone of the public who wishes to remove any items from the public comment?
There is no
Or
public comment.
comment, sorry. No? All right, how about any any members wish to remove it? Wonderful. All right. Thank you.
Bradford will second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, signify by saying nay. Seeing none, any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item of information is item number 2, draft the 2025 Blueprint and Environmental Impact Report status update by Lisa Lynn. SACOG staff will present this item.
Good afternoon, Chair Baines and committee members. I'm Lisa Lind. I'm a principal planner on the planning and programming team at SACOG. I'm here today with a brief update on the 2025 Blueprint. In August at your meeting, we summarized the work that's been completed, and since your last meeting, we can add that the public review period concluded. This was an opportunity for our state and local partners and community members to see how the work of the past few years has come together in the strategies, the analysis, and the highlights from all of our jurisdictions that are contained within the plan. So as a result of public review, we did receive a number of letters. The comment letters were split between those that were comments on the Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, and the draft blueprint. So we received 10 letters on the EIR, and the remainder came in on our draft plan. Overall, the comment period resulted in comments from our agencies, tribal governments, non-governmental organizations, and we also received comments on the plan from members of the public. On this slide, we wanted to just list the letters that we received from our state and local agencies so that you would see that we still have partners who are highly engaged. And we do anticipate that this is great news. We know these partners are going to be using the plan. So to get the feedback throughout this process has been just a really important touch point for us with all of our partners. We received fewer letters maybe compared to prior cycles, just to give you a little bit of context there. And that's really remembering that there was a lot more outreach and there were numerous opportunities to provide input leading up to the release of the draft. So I think that the early input on the draft, and including the spring when we were discussing at the regional managers, the regional planning partnership, our quarterly transportation meetings with your agencies, And then there was also the local tour to the boards and councils. Those were all great opportunities for us to make sure that when we put the draft on the street, a lot of the input had already been incorporated. So just to keep the updates going, the comments are still being reviewed, including a review by members of our transportation, our programming, and other technical teams where needed. But to sort of just give you a summary of where we're at, we're currently not seeing any comments that substantially affect the analysis that was presented. And where we're finding that there are really helpful suggestions for clarifications in the plan or updates, we want to, and we think so far they can be accommodated with minor revisions to the plan. So that's what we're working through right now so that we can bring that back to this committee. And we want to continue to provide timely updates with all of our work. So just to recap, we're responding to all the comments formally in the final environmental impact report. And then this also includes updating the plan where needed. And also we're going to update our public outreach appendix just to summarize the most recent input that was received. So when we look at the time frame, we're working to finish draft responses to comments this month. And if that all proceeds on schedule, we're going to complete any revisions to the plan in October and hopefully have those ready for your review. And then we'll be back just each month with a similar update to try to make sure that you're really informed about the work that we were doing and leading up to the consideration for approval by this committee and ultimately our board. So with that, thank you very much for your time today.
The clerk, is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this item?
There is no public comment.
Any comments from the committee? All right. Thank you for the presentation, the update. All right, we'll now move on to the next information item. Item number 3, upcoming SACOG housing activities. Dov Kevin.
Good afternoon. All right, so we have a quick information item for you today with several updates actually on some of the housing work that's happening at SACOG over the next few months. I'm joined by our newest colleague here, Chelsea Lee, who we're delighted to have and is going to be leading some of our work on the upcoming cycle 7 of the Regional Housing Needs Allocation Process, or RHNA. So I'm just going to run through some of the high-level housing things that we're working on. Then I'll hand it over to Chelsea to kind of talk about RHNA. So you just heard from Lisa that we're sort of wrapping up our work on the 2025 blueprint, and so that actually really allows us an opportunity to kind of shift some of our staff time away from actually updating that plan, moving more towards some of the implementation activities. So we've had several conversations with your staff about kind of how we can be most helpful on the topic of housing moving forward. And what we keep hearing time and time again is that data, and particularly data that's difficult to collect at the local level, expensive to collect, technical assistance and funding. And so that's really what we're trying to kind of orient our work around over the next few months. I'll provide just sort of a few updates on that. Let's see, here we go. So first update is on the work to kind of identify and secure a new source for of funding for Green Means Go. I think we had a great discussion on that last month. On some of those options, we sort of narrowed in on the regional VMT mitigation option, and based on some of the feedback from that conversation, we're going to be conducting some targeted outreach over the coming months. So we got some focus groups and interviews coming up with a variety of stakeholders. We're going to be working with the development community, advocacy groups, community-based organizations, of course, your local staff, partner agencies, of course, STA being one of the key ones there. And then after that sort of targeted outreach, we're going to return to this committee probably several times at the earliest in a couple months or so to kind of report back on what we've heard and talk through kind of what this thing could look like and present a viable alternative to that state bank that we talked about. Moving to the next one. So last Monday, SACOG published the 2024 housing permit data for the region. I previewed some of that data at the last month, the Green Means Go luncheon, and then again at the Lunar item where we talked about the new funding source. Garrett Ballard-Rosa actually from our staff is leading that effort, and if you were available for the board luncheon this month, he sort of presented the larger suite of regional monitoring that we're doing as part of that. But we're in sort of the rollout phase of this data. We, presented to the regional managers last Thursday. We're going to be presenting that again at the Livability Summit that Valley Vision is putting on October 1st. But we're really trying to, put that data out there and get it in the hands of your staff to make that useful as possible. So SACOG staff is also working on a number of other technical assistance products right now. I think you'll hear a theme with what Chelsea is going to be talking about on RENA. We're really trying to save your jurisdiction, your staff, time and money. So one of the big efforts that we're doing right now is updating what we call our base year. And that's really a very granular spatial data set with existing conditions as of a certain point in time. So we're looking at January 1st, 2025. And it's the number of jobs, the types of jobs, the number of units, the types of units on every single parcel across the region. It's a really quite large data undertaking, but it's a very difficult one to do at the local level. And so it's one that we do periodically at the regional level. And this is one of those products that virtually every one of our local governments relies on. Every time you do a general plan update, specific plan update, a major planning effort like that, you're relying on that data. And so we wanted to kind of update that for 2025. Last time we did this was in 2020. Lots happened in the world since 2020, so this is sort of a big update for us. We continue to act, I think, as a regional forum to kind of bring together your staff to talk to each other and talk to us about, what's happening with your peer agencies, what's happening at the state. We just had a really good panel a couple weeks ago now, where we had folks from City of Marysville, City of Folsom, and City of Sacramento to kind of talk through how they have sort of sequenced major planning actions that they've taken over the last few years between things like specific plans, housing elements, general plans. I think that was a really helpful conversation for some of the jurisdictions that hadn't gone through all of those yet, but will be in the next few years. We're also working on a webinar coming up in the next few weeks here to talk through all of the legislative updates that have happened across the street on housing and planning. This is probably the most requested webinar that we get from your local staff, because it's very difficult to track all of the new laws that happen each year and to understand what that actually means and what the requirements are on your local planning staff. So we'll be able to do that in the next few weeks. And then lastly, we continue to really provide a lot of technical assistance on local planning grant applications. So there's several grant programs where your staff will sort of reach out to SACOG for help with the application itself. So for example, we worked very closely on the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities program. This is the HSC program. It's funded over $200 million of housing and transportation improvements in our region. So we've had, I think, 4 or 5 applications from the region this cycle, many of which reach out to us, and we provide things like ridership data, like projected ridership changes if you had this transit improvement. Who should you be connecting with from local staff in the Public Works Department if you have an active transportation improvement? How should you approach the application? These are technical assistance, that we provide every year, and I think we're quite hopeful that we're going to be getting at least one application funded this cycle, and we'll be finding out in the next month or so. So anyway, that's sort of some of the things that are going on the overall housing level. I'll just hand it to Chelsea to talk about RENA now.
Yes, thank you, Dov. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Chelsea Lee. I'm an associate planner here with SACOG's planning and programming team. Here today to provide some updates on SACOG's timeline for the upcoming Cycle 7 RENA and housing element update, as well as the suite of technical assistance services and products that we are developing to support your jurisdictions in navigating this cycle. So many of you are already familiar with this process. This is a state mandate. Every 8 years, HCD provides us as the COG with the Regional Housing Needs Determination, which represents the total number of housing units a region must plan for. SACOG, in collaboration with your staff, then determine how to allocate that need across our 28-member jurisdictions. Once jurisdictions have their RENA, they must adopt a housing element that it demonstrates how they can accommodate the RENA through zoning and other planning mechanisms. So if you also recall, while RENA is a state requirement, it is not a mandate on how much housing gets built in the region. Rather, RENA is about setting the table for development to occur. So usually that's by way of rezoning to higher densities and identifying sites with additional capacity for infill and multifamily development. So while cycle 7 is still a few years away and no action is needed today, we simply wanted to convey that SACOG is aware that cycle 7 is coming, and we are doing a lot of the prep work now to make sure your planning staff feel supported through this process. So one of the first things that we're going to be bringing back to this committee in October is an action item to approve and a request for proposals to secure some consultant support in developing the RENA methodology a couple years down the line. So in the interest of being proactive, though, we wanted to preview what our work plan looks like leading into cycle 7. So as you can see here, the timeline has a few key milestones that we're planning for as cycle 7 comes up. The timeline is still tentative. We're working with HCD to get more guidance around some of the key dates. Some things may also be changing due to ongoing legislation. So we are closely monitoring that and in discussion with the state to keep your staff informed. Essentially, we're going to start meeting with your planning staff next summer when we'll kick off a series of housing planner meetings to co-create how the region approaches the RENA methodology. That work will continue into April of 2027 as we refine the methodology, prepare the menu options for review by the state, for our board, for you all as committee members, and for the other policy committees, as well as public hearings and public comment. Pending no legislation that changes this, SACOG will get our regional housing needs determination from the state by May 15th, 2027. We plan to take the final version of the RENA plan to adoption by the board sometime in December of 2027. And then your cycle 7 housing elements will be due on May 15th, 2029. So another thing about this timeline, your staff are aware of some of these key milestones. Dov mentioned the webinar on the general plan sequencing a few weeks ago. It was also during that webinar we provided these updates on the timeline, and we also previewed SACOG's cycle 7 housing element data package. This data package is the first of many technical assistance products and services that we will provide to you for use in cycle 7. It's a data set with approximately 70 indicators on local housing conditions. It is a required component of the housing element. In this cycle, we're taking that data one step further. For the first time, we plan to have customized profiles for each jurisdiction that will summarize the data so that your staff will be able to directly reference and copy and paste that analysis into the housing element. So your staff can expect to see some cost savings and time saved on any RFP scope of work issued for a housing element consultant because SACOG has already gone and procured that data for you. So in between now and leading up to the RENA methodology work, we are also exploring other services and products that will bring down costs or time spent on housing element activities related to data collection, procurement processes, and the actual drafting of the housing element. This includes looking at all the required components of the housing element and seeing where we can provide those standardized templates, those draft narratives, those analyses that can be conducted at the regional level, right? So related to topics like affirmatively furthering fair housing, which was a big part of last cycle, an at-risk analysis, and the ADU affordability survey and tool. So in conclusion, we're laser focused on eliminating as much of the front end work that is placed on your staff to the extent possible. We want to recognize that we're working in an increasingly challenging political landscape, and we know that federal and state dollars are becoming much more harder to draw down. But we also want you to know that SACOG is committed to providing those tools and resources that will save your jurisdictions some time and money during this process. So thank you, and glad to take any questions about these updates.
Any questions from the public?
There is no public comment.
I'll bring it back to the committee for questions. Director Hume.
First of all, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I have two questions. One, you mentioned bringing in outside consultants for support on the project. I'm curious what that scope of work would be. And second question is, given that RENA is simply an allocation of units within an affordability or an income strata, what prompts or what factors are at play in order to redo the methodology every RENA cycle?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So the first question related to the consultant, That scope of work will primarily be to support us in developing the RENA methodology for this cycle. The RFP scope of work will also include some additional items that we're looking at related to the technical assistance we want to develop for your members. So the two things that we're primarily looking at in supplementing that RFP scope of work for the methodology will be one, work on the ADU affordability survey that your jurisdictions will use in order to count ADUs towards the RENA, as well as some components of the AFFH analysis. So if we can do some of that at the regional level, we're hoping that, right, in your housing elements for cycle 7, your jurisdictions will have some sort of standardized regional template with, regional trends and patterns that they can then simply supplement with local data, save some time and costs associated with that.
I'm happy to cover the second part of the question if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, so the sort of components that make up how you do the methodology, I think is what you're getting at. So there used to be a list of like 25 of the factors that you needed to consider along with objectives that you needed to consider. Last cycle that was amended to leave the factors as consider, but then outline these 5 set of objectives that you need to further. Further is a very specific legal term used there. You need to proactively demonstrate to the state how each region is actually moving the needle on each one of those things. And so our methodology last cycle was oriented specifically around those. I won't get into too much of the details, but it's around increasing the housing supply and mix of housing types, promoting infill, promoting a better mix of jobs and housing, so jobs housing balance and jobs housing fit. And then there's kind of a regional income parity component, so try to jurisdictions that are kind of high opportunity and wealthier, taking on a larger sort of share of the lower income part of RENA to sort of move folks towards parity, and then affirmatively furthering fair housing. So those are the 5 objectives that are laid out. It is the reason why we just don't re-up the same methodology is that conditions change. It's completely up to the board every single cycle for how you want to further those objectives, but we will need to demonstrate through the process how we do that.
Director Kozlowski?
Yeah, I'd like to return to the first part of your Director Hume's question. So theoretically, we are doing these things to relieve local jurisdictions of responsibility for some of the analysis that would be duplicative or where they might not have expertise in doing it, right?
That's correct.
That's the idea. So the question regarding outside resources for SACOG to be able to provide that, is this a question of a lack of internal expertise or bandwidth? Because we theoretically, SACOG is the center of excellence on these particular topics and should be able to do that with its staff, in my mind. So that may not be a question for you, Chelsea, to answer right this instant, but I'll take it from anybody.
I'm happy to answer, but maybe Clint can supplement that. I mean, I think it is the latter. It is a bandwidth issue. So I think what we're trying to do is supplement our work on the methodology to try to.
With a 2-year runway, we don't have enough bandwidth?
Well, I think we're trying to, the focus, again, from what we've heard from local governments is really focusing on, some of the funding questions, some of the, technical assistance questions. So I think we're trying to focus a lot of our attention, for example, on Green Means Go, which is like a key implementation program of the plan and the funding component of that.
Okay.
And then I think the idea with this consulting contract would be open up some internal bandwidth to be able to focus on that.
Okay. I challenge my own staff all the time on this particular topic because
it's a
question of
it's a fair challenge.
prioritization.
The
Yeah.
other kind of large element I'd put is that we are obligated also to update the regional transportation plan in a more minor way in 2027. These same staff both do the land use assumptions for the regional plan and have to do RENA, and we've only got a couple of them. So it really comes down to that bandwidth issue of being able to accomplish both those things together. So you'll see the scope of work when we bring it back to you and kind of the extent of support we're looking to have. SACOG staff's absolutely going to have a very large and outsized role in developing all of this. But to be able to manage the Green Means Go, the 27 update, and the arena process and all of the member support, having more than the 2 or 3 people that we have here will be tremendously helpful.
Okay.
All right, any further questions?
Thank you and welcome aboard, Chelsea.
Thank you.
Question about that webinar, that's regarding the laws that have been changed. That's amazing and wonderful. How do the municipalities know that it's available to see and how do you make sure everybody watches it?
Yeah, so we reach out individually. So we have a sort of a roster of all of the housing planners across the region that we keep very up to date as it relates to housing and RENA. And so we have, I think, a 1, 2, and a 3 from every jurisdiction. And in many cases, we just add on, multiple others. So everyone is very aware of it. And I think we usually have very good turnout for those particular sessions. I think typically we try to wait towards the end of the year to do that because there is still legislative session to happen and there may be, a few laws that are passed between now and then. This was a particularly large year in the legislature at the governor's budget and trailer bill level. And so we've considered even doing 2 of those where we have one where we just talk about stuff that happened in the trailer bills and then one at the end of the year. But your staff will be absolutely aware of it and will probably attend.
Okay, great. And then second question related to that, you mentioned legislation that obviously may change a lot of this. Is there something that's floating to the top that you're watching that we should be aware of?
Well, so there's a lot of RENA bills. I don't know. I think probably the one that floats to the top is there's a proposal that would accelerate when regions get the determination. So if that passed, you should
Right.
probably take over because you remember.
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's a couple of bills. I think some of the big pieces like Dov mentioned are going to give us the regional housing needs determination earlier. I think it's by around something like instead of 2 years, 3 years. So we would have our number earlier and we would then be required to consult with HCD or the state earlier. I think that's a good thing. That gives us even more of a runway to plan and continue to engage with your planning staff even earlier than how we have this timeline so that we can work towards a methodology that works for everyone, hopefully. There's some other, I think, minor RENA bills. There are things related to, for example, how starting to collect data on, student housing. I think that was a big topic that came up in cycle 6, where a lot of, there were a lot of questions about why HCD wasn't able to count student housing as part of, receiving credit from the RENA. So I think Cabaldon has a bill to start collecting some of that data with the idea that we move towards, some of the advocacy around that piece. There's also some bills related to more data and tracking on at-risk units. So preservation of units, how those are counted, different things like that. But I think the biggest pieces are the ones that would move up the consultation and the determination dates.
Director Clark-Kretz, I think one way that would be great if we can get all of you to do it is to actually help advertise the webinar. And so do we have a date?
We
Not
do
yet.
Not yet.
But we will absolutely. send
Okay,
out.
when we do, it's exactly the kind of thing would be great for all of you as you do your updates back to your boards and councils. If you could just let folks know about that. We just had a lunch on all the data dashboard and all the housing numbers that we've just published. And that's something else we would love for you all to, again, as you do your quick reports out, right, to your
Yeah.
boards and councils when we have a date, and also this housing data, which is really good news in the region in terms of our production levels in the last calendar year. So we'll get that out to you as a follow-up to the committee meeting.
So that'd be really helpful because my constituents are also very, very interested in that. So we appreciate
I'm
that.
guessing they are.
All right. Well, thank you for the report and the update. We'll move on now. There's one item on receive and file for you to review at your leisure. If there are no questions on the receive and file items, we can move on to other matters. Any questions?
I just got some calendar dates for you that we do know. So working backwards, October the 3rd, Friday, October the 3rd is going to be the board retreat in Elk Grove. You should all have calendar appointments. We're putting a really good lineup together for you all, so hope you can join us there. October the 2nd is your next committee meeting of this committee. And October the 1st is a summit between Valley Vision and SACOG, a livability summit for the region, which I know I put in my executive director updates, but we can certainly push back out to you. So we'd love to have you there. We are sponsoring that. And then, yeah, October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So we get to see you at all of those. Thanks.
All right. Okay, other matters. This is time where any member of the board can provide updates or address issues for any item not on the agenda. If there are no questions or updates on land use, are there any questions, sorry, any updates anybody want to? Go ahead, Flynn.
Thank you, Chair. I had the opportunity, I just got back a couple days ago from Amsterdam. I was there for 10 days, and primarily in my role as the Vice Chair of the Air District, learning about smart mobility, active transportation, you name it. It was wonderful. I learned a lot. But the biggest update I wanted to provide that's relevant to SACOG is I was able to give a presentation to the House of Provinces in Belgium about the amazing work that's going on in our region. So not just in the city of Sacramento, but I think I was the only representative from Sacramento there. And so what the broader region, what we're doing in terms of hydrogen, electric vehicle infrastructure and beyond. And so I just really wanted to thank James Corliss and the entire staff for putting together a wonderful set of slides for me. I was very well prepared and just wanted to thank you for that.
All right. Any other matters?
Minor observation. My button or my little sticker's green. Is everybody else's green? All right. So it must mean land use. That's okay. Thanks. That's all.
All right. That, in that case, now that we know where we're at, that we will adjourn this meeting. And,
Oh, can I do one more? Sorry. Director Teeter, do you want to just talk a little bit about the board meeting coming up too? I should have mentioned that, but I think you should.
Yes,
And
so.
give a shout out to Saturday before that too.
Oh.
Oh,
This
yes.
coming Saturday.
So opening day for Bishop's Pumpkin Farm is this Saturday, and yes, I will be. It's my favorite place in the world, with or without the children. Amazing bakery, amazing food, rides. There's new rides there, plenty of food we can eat on site, by the way. No one has to leave to go eat. They have plenty of options, but we're gonna start the tour off at Beal. So if you got all your information, we're gonna go tour Beal. Then we will move to Bishop's, and then afterwards, I expect to see everybody on the spinning honeypot rides. I think they're honeypot rides. So I'm gonna see if you two can do it without their own,
Tractor-
but yes.
tractor's more my
The tractor too, but yes, it's
So
gonna be.
2 weeks this morning, September 18th, that starts with Beal, and then board meeting starts at Bishop's.
And we have
10:15 a.m.
Lon coming, Glenda's gonna be there, so you're gonna learn about the YARC, our research center that we're coming. We might touch a little bit on the regional sewer plan that's going in. You're gonna get a little bit update of the development over off by the Hard Rock, I believe, yes. So
Yeah.
it's gonna be a lot. You're gonna learn a lot about Wheatland. And if you've never been to Bishop's, you're gonna have a blast.
all right, last chance. Any other matters? No, then Chelsea would like to once again welcome you to the SACOG team, and we all look forward to working with you. And great job, Liz. Thank you for keeping me in line. So this meeting's adjourned. See you October 2nd.
That's a record.